Today we'll talk about commercial beauty photography retouching, and I just want to to save our time and not talk a lot about the theory today, but considering that some of you may not have seen what we've already talked about, I just want to recap just a little bit about what commercial beauty images are and what the difference is between simple, basic portrait retouching and commercial beauty retouching. So we established yesterday that commercial beauty images are used to advertise and sell a product or a service, such as skincare products, cosmetics, beauty supplies, hairstyling products, perfumes, jewelry, and so on. And in beauty retouching, it's all about creating a perfect face, pristine skin, flawless makeup, and usually, if we compare to portrait photography, the personality of the model is secondary, if important at all. And when it comes to retouching, with commercial beauty retouching, we tend to remove all distracting temporary and permanent elements such as skin blemishes, fine lines, unflattering shadows, smudged makeup, moles and scars, unless we're working with a celebrity, and such as Cindy Crawford, we wouldn't try to remove that famous mole. And we also often have to combine a few parts of the image from different files to create one final ideal composition. And natural and clean colors are often used in skincare and makeup advertising images, which means that it is very important for the retoucher to be able to achieve natural and healthy looking skin. Not only maintain if we already got good source material, but also achieve if we have to color correct and get to it at the end. And I had so much to talk about, but now it turns out 90 minutes isn't enough. And I had to throw some things out, but I tried to stick with the most important things, at least what I really want to talk about. They're theoretic, but I'll try to spend more time digging into my PSD files today. And just to remind you guys, there is a page that I set up with a lot of links and videos hooked up to that page. If you go to bit.ly/and bit.ly/JK for Julia Kuzmenko, PSW for Photoshop Week 2015, that page, and it's case sensitive too. If you go there, you will find all the links and all the materials that I believe are very important, but we don't have the time to talk about them now.
And I'm going to remind people, yes, it is case sensitive, so they're all capitals, so make sure that you enter that there.
Yeah, thank you so much. And my beauty retouching, I usually spend a little bit more time working with developing my raw files, and I always work with raw files. Even, if I get a client just for retouching, and if they only have a JPEG, there is not so much that we can do with a JPEG, especially if it's poorly lit or there are many mistakes that I have to correct. So raw file is, of course, our base. And if everything is done well, if everything was shot well, the makeup was done beautifully, and there are no mistakes, and I made sure that I shot it with not adding problems for my post-production, then there is not so much time I also have to spend in my RAW converter, which I use Lightroom. I only need to tweak the exposure a little bit, the overall colors if I need to at all, but I always I try to always shoot so that I don't even have to go there. So everything is perfect, and I can get that file into Photoshop and then continue with retouching. But sometimes what happens is, especially when you're just starting out with even just shooting, if you expose your image so that there are brighter areas and there are darker areas, if you try to brighten some part of the image, you will overexpose the other part. And because RAW file gives us so much information, if we just take those parts of the image and then combine them in Photoshop, we can do so much more. We just extend the possibilities to they're endless. And same can happen with the colors. Sometimes you can just color correct if your white balance was a little bit off, or there are color shifts or anything, or even just the makeup was a little bit not the color that you meant it to be, or not the color that your client wanted to be. You can make little tweaks. But if you, for example, shot and realize that the nail polish is completely different or slightly different from the color of the lipstick and they must match, then again, in RAW, you can very quickly just get everything and get a few different variations of your RAW file, pile them up into your PSD, and start retouching with already all the colors and exposure given to you just the way you mean it. It's really fast. It may take me longer to explain and show you how I do it, but in reality, you know, if everything is photographed perfectly, everything is lit well, colors are right, you don't even need to know about this, but it's never, nothing ever goes exactly the way it's planned, so it's good to actually have this, a backup way to do it. So then after everything is done, I take a few conversions into Photoshop, and then I do my retouching, which is the longest part. And I always start with quick cleanup, healing and cloning, frequency separation if I need to. Dodge and burn will be the longest part of my retouching, and then local color corrections. It can be the color corrections that were supposed to be done to the image from the very beginning, but it also can be something that the color shifts that might have been caused by dodging and burning. And then I take care of eye makeup, lips, and hair. And again, I just want to say it again, I've already said that, but I just want to say it again. This part can be very long and it can be also very, very quick. The better the makeup and hair was done before you captured the image, the quicker this part will be. So it can be really just as long as hours of fixing the popped up false eyelashes or smudged makeup, or if the lipstick was too liquid and dark or rich color, the model under the lights, her body temperature actually will melt the lipstick a little bit more, and it will start leaking into the pores. And then you will see little lines coming out of so the better, if that was noticed as you were shooting, if your makeup artist had a chance to look into the tethered image and spotted that, that can be fixed, and then the whole bunch of images that you shoot is already fixed. But if you didn't notice that because you didn't check that, or your makeup artist didn't check that, then you're stuck with a lot of images that each one of them needs that to be fixed. So 1 minute that you spend inspecting the image before you photograph it can actually save you hours afterwards. So it's very, very important. And the more I shoot beauty, the face is so close, everything is so important. The more I shoot beauty, the more I understand that my team is, they're gold. They're just, everything they do is saving my time in post-production. And the results, of course, are much better. And the last thing that I would do, not always, but when I need to, is liquefying. I take care of the shapes at the end. I mentioned why I do it at the end yesterday, but I also want to say that sometimes when I start retouching and I just see something that is obviously needs to be shifted, like the shoulder popping up a little bit too far, I can actually do it in the very beginning. If it's the only thing and I know for sure I'm not going to leave it that way, I can do it in the very beginning and then continue with my retouching. So I can do something with shapes in the beginning. But when it comes to, say, the size of the nose or the size of the ear, if something is bothering me and I think I will do something at the end, I will leave it to the very end, because dodge and burn can help me to reshape some of the features too. So I don't want to jump to the liquefy filter until after I've done everything else. Sometimes you just don't see a problem anymore by the end of the retouching. And then the last thing that I will do is color grading, applying artistic colors and adding accents. And that's also because that's such a subjective part of retouching. And I finish my image, and I usually retouch it late at night. And when I'm done with the image, I will shut it down, will turn off my computer, go sleep, wake up, look at it again, and sometimes it's like, what was I thinking? It doesn't even look good. So I can easily just go and change the color gradient just a little bit. So with fresh eyes, I can definitely get what I want it to be. Okay, so I leave it to the very end. Or I can send it to the client, and the client will not be happy with the final colors. So again, I can just get back and quickly fix it at the end. Everything else is more or less defined. You know exactly how to fix a lipstick, you know that this must be changed, but color grading is very subjective. So that's why it's at the end. It's also, if you do color grading in the very beginning, some of the blending modes and basic tools might act a little bit differently. So you won't see the exact, for example, overlay will act more like soft soft light blending mode. So because of those things, and I use overlay blending mode a lot, so that's why color grading shifted at the very end. That's just the outline, and I usually stick with it, but of course, it can be different. If there are some steps that you may not have to do at all, and because I used to merge my layers as I was progressing with every part of the image, then I forced myself into changing that because I've learned a lot from my professional retoucher colleagues, and now I try to keep it this way. My background layer, which is the merged raw convergence all together, so that's my background layer. Then on top of that, on the new layer, I apply all of my basic tool corrections, healing brush, clone stamp tool, sometimes frequency separation with the little parts that I need. And then starting from here, everything on top of this will be see-through adjustment layers. It can be even dodging and burning, it can be color grading, color corrections, small fixes. Even if I have to paint in eyelashes or eyebrows, it will still be a new layer on which just a few pixels were added. So everything is see-through. And I can go into any of them and change the opacity, change the blending mode to adjust everything. The shapes also at the end, because I have to stamp all layers, and then it will be not a see-through at the end of my retouching, right? So that's why it's sitting at the top, and the color grading is higher above. So by the time that I got to the stamping, I need to make sure that everything else is done there. And if my liquefying wasn't well done and the client didn't like it, I can just remove it and redo it, but I already have everything underneath it. If I had my shapes done in the beginning, then I can't just change my shapes. Everything else was done based on that image. So again, everything can be interplaced and everything can be changed as you progress. And sometimes I'm trying to be more and more organized with my layers, and I understand that how much it is so important. Sometimes I do my dodging and burning. I have a few rounds of dodging and burning, all sitting in one dodge and burn folder. Then I do some color corrections, and then I realize that I want to do a little bit more dodging and burning. I used to add everything on top, but now I just go back into the dodge and burn folder and add it there. So I only have just a few folders that contain all similar changes inside. It really helps to, first of all, speed up your workflow. You know exactly where everything is, and you know where to go to change things if you need to. So organizing your layers is a super important little part that will just speed up everything and make it easier for you to be oriented in your own PSD file.